Welcome to Instant Grace, a mini version of Gracearchy with Jim Babka. I'm Jim Babka. Ben Shapiro doesn't understand the Overton window. I don't want to be unduly critical, but let's set some context here. Let's set some context. Candace Owen gets fired from the Daily Wire. We're not going to get into all the details of that. It was a big story several weeks ago. Ben appears on Dave Rubin's show. He's a closely allied guy, and he says, Candace Owens fell outside of our Overton window at the Daily Wire. I want to help Ben out and suggest you were trying to sound maybe a little bit sophisticated at that moment, Ben, but the truth of the matter is the words you were looking for are editorial policy. That's right, editorial policy, because, Ben, you set that policy. An Overton window, this concept was given to us by a political scientist who worked in think tanks in Michigan back in the 90s. He died young, no longer with us, not able here to defend the concept, so here I am. The Overton window has to do with the range of acceptable public opinion where the debate lies. So if you're a centrist, you're always inside the frame, but that frame has the ability to move. It has the ability to shift, and you always want to be inside it as part of the mainstream. You want to be treated better. You get better treatment in terms of your debate or your position being taken seriously in polite company when you're inside the Overton window. So from a strategic basis, you understand that there's a certain tug of war to move the window so that you can get your position in there. Tom Woods has another colorful way of describing this very same idea. He calls it the index card of acceptable public opinion. It's that small area in which certain ideas exist. It implies that there are other ideas outside of it. And that's what's important about this analysis. So from a graceful perspective, why is this important? Well, let me illustrate this in the following way. I'm going to go to the Kennedy family. They did something that I predicted to family and friends. I mean, it was entirely predictable. They recently stood up, many of them, or like I think over 40 of them, and endorsed Joe Biden over their cousin and family member. And they do so because they're basically they're part of the Democratic industrial complex. They know where their bread's buttered. They certainly didn't want to side with their embarrassing cousin, who holds some outside the Overton window positions, and outside, to put it mildly. And because those positions are outside, they can be easily dismissed. They can be hand waved off. They don't have to be steel manned. They can be straw manned, name called, and then dismissed. And that's precisely what they do. Very few people take the time to actually engage him in a real discussion about what his actual positions are and why he holds them. That'll change a little bit over the course of this presidential campaign, I suspect, as he becomes more and more of a threat. So will the intensity of the attacks against him. And he may be wrong. So to be clear, I'm not taking a position as I'm sitting here in front of you. This is not about vaccines. We could apply this to other stories too. This is about whether or not someone is strawmanned or steelmanned. This is about whether they get to speak or they are silenced, whether they are part of the dialogue or they're marginalized. And I am not suggesting that every single crackpot view out there should be platformed, but I am certainly suggesting that just simply dismissing with the hand wave rather than engaging costs us all a learning experience. It costs the participants an experience where they may, and here's the issue, change their mind. I believe it's only possible for us to not only maintain peace or reduce the amount of violence that we're experiencing, but also to get to a place where, because we showed some understanding, because we didn't simply dismiss, wave hands, or worse, name call, we actually tried to consider the opinion of someone else, that we learn something in the process. We become better in the process. And maybe we change our minds. Maybe it turns out we didn't know everything. Maybe some new issue is brought up as a result of this, and we have some new way of looking at things, a better potential way of looking at things. That's what happens in a graceful dialogue. So I believe this concept of an Overton window is significant strategically, so that you understand I got to get my issue in the mainstream, and that there's a tug of war going on socially. It's not determined by one man's policy or two men's policy. It's determined by an entire dialogue that's going on socially. And then secondly, that we go one step further, because I think the Overton window gives us another grace angle, which is to understand that there are certain positions that are marginalized. And the grace approach would be to say, wait a minute, who is being marginalized here? Why are they being marginalized? And what are the real arguments against their position as opposed to the dismissive ones? What can I potentially learn to better understand why I stand where I stand? And can through this dialogue, one or both of us move? Can I see the best in these people that have these positions that are in the margins? You see, because public opinion shifts significantly over time. And the Overton window on issues, big issues, let's say like race, has clearly moving quite a bit over the decades. So the people in the Overton window right now that might think they're at the end of history and they're completely right, almost certainly are not. And that openness and that ability to see the marginalized not only is graceful, but it matters to our future progress. So I want to challenge anybody who's, by the way, other people have repeated Ben Shapiro's error and started talking about an Overton window as if it's an editorial policy, to stop it. Let's use precise language. It's the best way, by the way, in conflict resolution, they'll tell you it's important. In philosophy, linguistics always becomes an issue. We need to use the correct words to describe the thing. Overton does not describe merely an editorial policy. It describes a significant phenomenon that happens socially about what is the acceptable range of debate. And it allows us as graceful spectators to say, maybe there's some people that are being marginalized that need to be heard as well. That is the place where new ideas come from. That is also the place where we can learn to reinforce our values. That is also the place where we may end up changing our mind.